From the moment humans began dreaming in stone, they faced a question that still astonishes modern engineers. How did early cities, armed with no steel cranes, no diesel engines, no modern hydraulics, manage to lift, drag, and perfectly position stones that sometimes weighed as much as a fully loaded 18-wheeler? The story of how ancient builders solved this puzzle is not just about architecture. It's about imagination, teamwork, trial and error, and the often overlooked brilliance of early engineering. When we walk among the ruins of Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, Mesoamerica, or the early Mediterranean world, we're seeing cities that didn't wait for modern machinery. Instead, they built their own methods. Simple, clever, surprisingly powerful, and those methods grew more sophisticated with every generation. To understand how they did it, we have to look closely at the human stories behind the stones, the labor systems, cultural motivations, seasonal rhythms, and scientific insights that transformed raw rocks into monuments, temples, levees, pyramids, city walls, and vast ceremonial plazas that have survived thousands of years. In places like ancient Egypt, according to archaeologists who have studied quarry marks and tool remnants, massive limestone and granite blocks were cut using copper chisels, pounding stones, and wooden wedges soaked in water to create controlled cracks. But getting the stones out of the quarry was just the beginning. Evidence carved into tomb walls and reliefs suggests Egyptians transported multi-ton blocks on wooden sledges, lubricated with water or oil to reduce friction, an insight confirmed by a 2014 physics experiment from the University of Amsterdam showing that just a small amount of moisture drastically cuts the force needed to drag heavy loads across sand. Teams of workers, often organized into rotating labor crews rather than enslaved masses as older myths once suggested, coordinated their movements through chant, rhythm, and rope systems. Once stones reached the building site, ramps, straight, zigzag, circular, or embankment style, were used to raise blocks step by step. Some archaeologists argue for a grand ramp system at Giza, while others suggest internal ramps built inside the pyramid's growing structure. The debate continues, but the principle remains clear. Early cities relied on geometry, friction control, and the power of unified labor to move what seems immovable. In Mesopotamia, where stone was scarce and mud brick was king, cities still needed stones for temples, statues, and elite construction. These stones were often hauled from distant mountains using sledges, river barges, and teams of draft animals.
Cuneiform records describe large transport operations with overseers, ration lists, and logistical notes, proof that moving stones was a major civic project requiring careful planning. Sometimes, routes were leveled in advance, or temporary causeways were built to support heavy loads. And in wet seasons, when the ground softened, Mesopotamians timed their hauling to take advantage of easier sledging conditions. Meanwhile, the Indus Valley cities, places like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, show signs of standardized brick sizes and sophisticated urban planning. While they used less megastone than Egypt or Mesopotamia, they still moved large stone blocks for public baths, drainage covers, and foundations. Archaeologists note that their transport methods likely combined river barges, rollers, sledges, and perhaps shifting teams of oxen. What makes the Indus Valley case fascinating is how standardized manufacturing, brick molds, ratio-based measurements, and modular design reduced the need for giant stone blocks in the first place, proving early engineers could solve problems not just by force, but by rethinking materials. In Europe, ancient builders created megalithic structures like Stonehenge, constructed between roughly 3000 and 2000 BCE, using sarsen stones weighing up to 25 tons and bluestones transported from Wales over 150 miles away. According to experiments by archaeologists such as Mike Parker Pearson, stones could have been moved using wooden sledges, tracks of rollers, greased pathways, or even wickerwork cradles that turned stones into pseudo-wheels. Other studies suggest teams could have loaded stones onto wooden frames that acted like giant skis. Transport routes may have combined land hauling and river floating, with seasonal flooding helping to carry stones closer to the Salisbury Plain. While no single method has been proven conclusively, the variety of experiments that work surprisingly well shows that ancient people didn't need modern motors, just a deep understanding of material behavior. Farther east, in the early cities of China, Neolithic and Bronze Age builders used rammed earth construction for walls and palaces, reducing their reliance on huge stones. But by the time of later dynasties, engineers had mastered stone moving at scales needed for imperial tombs and massive platforms. Wooden capstans, oxen teams, ropes woven from plant fibers, and large gangs of laborers helped move stones weighing dozens of tons. Written records from later periods describe the importance of timing movements during cooler months, when ropes stretched less and work crews handled heat better, a reminder that environmental adaptation was just as important as mechanical technique. In the Americas, cultures such as the Olmec, Maya, Zapotec, and later the Inca developed their own solutions.
The Olmecs moved colossal basalt heads weighing up to 50 tons across wetlands by rolling them on wooden logs, dragging them on sledges, and possibly using water channels to facilitate transport. Maya cities, without pack animals or wheels for heavy loads, moved stones using human labor, rollers, ramps, levers, and quarry-to-temple workflows designed to minimize distance. But the Inca stand out for their mastery of polygonal masonry, perfectly fitted stones shaped with pounding tools and dragged into place using ropes, ramps, and labor teams organized through the mita system. Spanish chroniclers described thousands of workers coordinating through call and response chants, moving stones that weighed up to 100 tons. Experiments in the Andes show that with the right coordination, inclined planes, and rope networks, these stones could indeed be moved without iron tools or wheels. When we examine the broader pattern, a clear theme emerges. Stone-moving methods across early cities were incredibly diverse, but built on the same core principles: friction reduction, mechanical advantage, environmental leverage, teamwork, and iterative problem-solving. Lubricated sledges appear in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Mediterranean. Rollers appear in Europe, the Pacific, and parts of Asia. Barges were used wherever rivers ran near quarries: Egypt along the Nile, Mesopotamia along the Tigris and Euphrates, India along the Indus, and many Mediterranean cities along coastal routes. Wooden cranes, simple but effective, appear in early Greece and Rome. Rope and pulley systems evolve as metallurgy improves. And everywhere we look, we find ramps: earthen, brick, timber, spiral, sloped, stepped, or combined. The idea that ancient people lacked technology is a misconception. What they lacked was industrial machinery. But they compensated with ingenuity, experimenting with gravity, leveraging seasonal changes, and applying geometric principles long before formal physics textbooks existed. Even more interesting is that early cities often used methods tailored to their cultural values. The Egyptians used stone hauling as a unifying national project tied to religion and kingship. Mesopotamians recorded their efforts on clay tablets, embedding engineering into bureaucratic life. The Indus Valley optimized through standardization. Stonehenge's builders likely embedded transport into ritual and community identity. The Inca used stonework to express political authority, seismic adaptation, and spiritual meaning. These were not just engineering choices, they were societal expressions. Over time, ancient engineering insights spread along trade routes. As early cities interacted, they borrowed ideas: rollers from one region, ramp designs from another, rope strengthening techniques from a third. Knowledge moved faster than stones, shaping a global exchange of practical know-how. And while some methods remain debated or even lost, modern experiments consistently demonstrate that simple tools, coordinated labor, and clever physics are enough to move stones of almost any size. That fact, more than anything, reminds us that early cities were not technologically primitive, they were technologically different. While we use electric motors and steel cranes, they used collective human will, inventive problem-solving, and a deep connection to the natural materials around them. Looking forward, researchers continue refining their understanding using 3D modeling, wear pattern analysis, experimental archaeology, and satellite imaging of ancient quarry routes. Some theories will change, others will be challenged, but the core story will remain a human one, about communities that believed they could reshape the world and then figured out how to do it, one heavy block at a time. And if there's one lesson to take from their achievements, it's this. Innovation doesn't always require new tools. Sometimes it simply requires new thinking, a united effort, and the willingness to imagine beyond the limits of the present. For viewers interested in technical details or applying lessons from ancient engineering to modern building, it's always wise to consult professional engineers, archaeologists, or structural specialists for accurate guidance. And that spirit of human creativity, stubborn determination, and shared purpose is something worth remembering the next time you walk past an ancient stone and wonder how on earth it ever got there in the first place.
In the end, these ancient stones remind us of something simple. Great achievements don't always need advanced machines, just creative minds and united hands. See you in the next story.